Welcome to Lectures and Assignments from Design and Build School of KING-KAMBUF. And this isn't just another deep dive. Think of this as your personal study session for the advanced master's level.
That's a good way to put it. We're getting into the specific knowledge you need to make that jump from, a highly skilled professional to a true master architect, builder, statesman.
Exactly. We are opening up the file for CMT 661, that's Construction Management for Public and Civic Projects, Year 5, Advanced Masters.
Right. And this is really designed for those of you who get it, who understand that in the public sector, the stakes are, they're just different. It's not just dollars and cents. It's public trust. It's civic function.
So our mission today, and this comes straight from the DBSK daily lecture for December 9th, is all about delivering public projects on time. Specifically, how to control cost, schedule, and risk in the real world.
And we have to start with a painful truth. Public projects, they almost never fail because of bad drawings.
Yeah.
Or, a structural miscalculation. They collapse. They collapse under the weight of just uncontrolled cost drift, schedule slippage, and risks that nobody even bothered to name.
And that failure, that operational failure, is precisely why this level of thinking is so critical. You have to see construction management not as like a bookkeeping chore in some back office.
No, absolutely not. It's your primary strategic leadership tool. I mean, that's what you have to wield. The master builder is the ultimate integrator, the one who has to command the entire financial and temporal framework of a project.
Okay, let's paint that picture, because it's a complicated one. You, the professional, you're standing right in the middle of all these competing forces.
A total nexus, yeah.
On one hand, you've got these promises made to the public, and let's be honest, they're often wildly optimistic, politically driven promises. Then you have the hard reality of a public budget. Fixed, finite, tied to appropriation cycles.
And then layer on top of that the contractor reality. What labor can actually do, what the supply chain can deliver, the cold, hard facts on the ground.
And all the while, you've got this clock ticking on community patience, which is always, always dwindling.
It's a war of attrition, really. We always talk about that classic cost-time-scope triangle,
Right.
In a private commercial job, you can usually negotiate one of those legs.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, let's extend the schedule, or we need to increase the budget, maybe trim the scope.
But not here.
Not in the public sector. Here, that triangle is like encased in this rigid political frame. You try to adjust one thing and it just puts this immense contradictory pressure on the other two. It's like being asked to do the impossible, deliver it all fixed scope, fixed time, fixed cost at the same time.
So our goal, our mission today is to give you the tools, the advanced knowledge to manage that impossible expectation. Not with magic, but with predictive honesty and strategic controls.
We want to train you to think like a seasoned owner's representative, someone who can see the failure coming months before it ever hits the job site, someone who can steer these massive civic works to delivery with their credibility and the public's trust intact.
To do that, we've pulled 5 core learning objectives directly from the CMT 661 module. So by the end of this, you'll be able to break down a budget, a whole public project budget, into these actionable cost control packages.
And that includes integrating both capital and operational needs, which is key.
Then we'll show you how to build a realistic schedule, a milestone-based schedule. And we'll talk about why that granular fantasy Gantt chart is often totally useless for public reporting.
We're also going to pinpoint the most insidious sources of cost growth and delay, the ones that are, really specific to the public works environment.
And crucially, you'll learn how to use a risk register, how to track contingencies not as a static number, but as an active, dynamic leadership resource.
Right. And finally, we'll get into a pretty sophisticated evaluation of the 4 big delivery methods. We're talking DBB, CMAR, DB, and PPP. We're not just going to define them. We're going to analyze how they transfer risk and how that changes your control strategy as the master builder.
This is the real integration, the practical knowledge you need to master this module.
All right, let's get right into the anatomy of the project, starting with the money. Section B, construction project anatomy cost and schedule discipline.
And the first point of failure, almost always, is a bad budget from the start. The source material is very clear on this. It demands a complete deconstruction of the budget, what it calls the cost stack bar.
Okay, so hard costs versus soft costs. Everyone at this level knows the basics, right? Hard costs are the brick and mortar.
The physical stuff. Materials, labor, the systems going in, and soft costs are everything else you need to organize that work. So design fees, legal, permits, insurance. But we're not just defining terms here. The point is about control points. And the hidden trap, the one that trips up public owners all the time and just destabilizes budgets years down the line.
It's the inadequate planning for owners' costs. You have to go beyond just CapEx and OpEx as definitions and really strategically align them.
Explain that. So CapEx is capital expenditure.
Right, the money to build the thing, to put the asset in place. And if you, as the master builder, only focus on that, you're basically setting a fiscal time bomb.
Because the political pressure is always to get that initial price tag as low as possible.
Always. Maximize what people can see, minimize what it costs up front, so everyone focuses on the CapEx items, the site work, structure, envelope, MEP, all of that. But they're ignoring the long tail.
And that's the OpEx. The operational expenditure, the money you need to actually run the building.
Exactly. And the module points to 3 critical OpEx items that consistently catch public agencies by surprise. They end up having to go back for more money after the ribbon's been cut.
Which are?
Maintenance, startup, commissioning, and the warranty reserve.
Okay, let's break down commissioning. Because that sounds like just flipping a switch. But it's not, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's this incredibly intensive, specialized process. You're verifying and documenting that every complex system, the HVAC, the digital controls, the security, is working exactly as designed. And, crucially, that it meets the owner's actual performance needs.
So if you just budget that as a small line item,
you're going to be massively under-resourced. Proper commissioning can be a huge percentage of your MEP hard costs. But if you skip it or skimp on it, you are absolutely guaranteeing years of expensive reactive maintenance and unhappy tenants.
And the warranty reserve.
It's vital. The contractor hands over the keys, but their liability for, say, a failed pump lasts for a year or two. The public agency needs a pot of money, the reserve, ready to fix those things without having to raid their departmental operating budgets. It's about budgeting for post-delivery integrity.
Okay, so back to the CapEx stack. To control it, you have to know where the money goes first. The source material highlights the top 10 line items that need the most scrutiny. And I'll be honest, I was surprised by what's at the top of the list. Number 1, consistently, is site work and utilities.
Right. People always assume it's the towering structure, the steel, but it's the dirt, it's the rock, the pipes under the ground. That's where all the unpredictable risk lives.
Things like complex grading or finding contaminated soil you didn't expect.
Exactly. Or the nightmare of jurisdictional fees just to tap into a city water main. If your initial geotechnical surveys are weak, your site work budget will explode and will crush your whole estimate before you've even poured a foundation.
Okay, so after site work, you've got the more predictable things like the structure, envelope, MEP systems, interior build-out.
Right, those are calculable. You can get a handle on them. But the next cluster is where financial leadership really comes into play. We're talking about general conditions and contractor overhead and profit.
Let's focus on general conditions. What exactly is that?
That's the cost of just running the site. Your superintendent's salary, the temporary power, the site office trailers, security, the safety crew. It's basically the cost of time on site.
Ah, so if the schedule slips.
Your general conditions bill goes up every single day. So if you're scrutinizing that line item, you're really scrutinizing the contractor's entire management plan. It forces some really important conversations early on.
And the last items on that list are things like design and consultants, testing, and then these 2 crucial buffers, contingencies and escalation.
Non-negotiable. They have to be in your CapEx. Contingency is your risk capital for what we call the known unknowns. You know, you might hit a layer of rock, you just don't know exactly where. That's what contingency is for.
And escalation seems more important than ever right now.
It's paramount, especially for public projects that have these long, drawn-out planning phases. If you're pricing steel today for a bid that's going out in 18 months, for a building that won't be finished for another 3 years after that,
you're exposed to 5 years of market chaos.
Precisely. You have to use regional cost indices, you have to do transparent inflation modeling. Otherwise, your project is already underwater before the first shovel even hits the ground.
All right, let's shift from the financial stack to the time dimension. Scheduling. The section is called Scheduling Beyond the Fantasy Gantt Chart.
I love that name because it's so true. The key here is to shift your focus away from the, hundreds of tiny granular tasks that a site super cares about and onto the big picture milestones.
Because that's what matters for political and financial stability.
Exactly. The master builder in the public realm isn't reporting on drywall installation progress. They have to communicate with clear, undeniable markers of progress that satisfy the funding agency, the legislators, the public. Granular tasks are for crew management. Milestones are for project governance.
And the source material lists 7 of these critical milestones. What's interesting is how many of them have nothing to do with actual construction.
Right. It starts with concept approval and funding authorization. Think about that. If you miss the legislative window to get your funding authorized, your project could be dead in the water for an entire fiscal year.
Then you hit the bureaucratic hurdles.
Permit issuance. Then we get to the practical governors, long lead procurement, then the physical markers people recognize, topping out or enclosure, substantial completion. And finally, occupancy. Those 7 points are your entire reporting cadence.
So that brings us to the critical path imperative. The idea that in public work, the critical path, the sequence of tasks that dictates your total project length, is rarely about pouring concrete.
Almost never. It has to fully embed all those non-construction items.
Well,
because those administrative delays, the procurement delays, those are the real-time killers.
so we're focusing on permits, funding releases, reviews, and especially long lead items, LLIs.
Yes, LLIs are the absolute make-or-break element for schedule control.
Why? What makes them so critical?
Because they operate on a timeline that is completely independent of your design process. For a big civic project, you might need custom-made air handlers, or a massive generator, or specialized elevator cabs. These things can have a 10, 12, even 18-month fabrication and delivery cycle.
So you have to order them way in advance.
Way in advance. But here's the leadership challenge, and the practice question in the module hits this directly. To order them on time, you have to commit millions of dollars based on a preliminary or maybe even just a schematic design.
Before you even know the final exact specification.
Precisely. If you wait for 100% construction documents, when every detail is finalized, you've already guaranteed a 1-year delay to your project. It's already happened.
So what does the strategic manager do?
You have to identify the minimum viable specs, the tonnage, the voltage, whatever it is, and you issue that procurement package early. And you accept the risk. You accept that a later design change might mean a costly change order. You're betting your schedule integrity against some financial risk. It's a calculated gamble.
And the integration checklist in the source material formalizes this. It says your schedule has to track compliance and performance targets too.
Yes. It's not just a plan, it's an active compliance tool. So for example, if you're aiming for a high sustainability rating, the review for your energy model has to be scheduled way before you order the MEP systems. Your schedule becomes your tool for performance assurance.
Let's move on to Section C, Mastering Risk. Seen, unseen, and strategically managed. So if cost and schedule are the symptoms, this is really the underlying disease.
That's a great way to think about it. As the master builder, you have to stop just, hoping for the best and start actively cataloging every possible way the project could fail.
And the risk taxonomy for public work is the starting point. It breaks risk into 3 types.
Right, and this is critical because each type demands a different kind of mitigation. You start with the known knowns.
Okay, what's a known known?
These are the risks you can fully see coming. A standard building code inspection, basic utility connection fees. You manage these with standard procedures and you just build them into your fixed costs. They're predictable.
Then you have the known unknowns.
And this is where most project risk lives. This is what your contingency budget is for. You know the risk exists, you just don't know the timing or the size. So subsurface conditions. You know you might hit rock, but you don't know how much. Or weather. You know you'll lose days to rain, you just don't know which days.
And finally, the really scary ones. The unknown unknowns.
The project killers. These are the catastrophic events that are, by definition, impossible to predict. A global pandemic that shatters your supply chain, a sudden political shift where a new administration just cancels the project midstream.
A black swan event.
Exactly. And for those, you don't need a line item. You need deep organizational resilience and a massive capacity for change control.
So just listing these isn't enough. You have to quantify them, right? That's where the risk heat map comes in.
Correct. You map the probability of the risk happening against the severity of its impact, the cost or the schedule delay. And the risks that are high probability and high impact, the ones in the red zone on your map, they need immediate resources to mitigate them, to move them from red to yellow.
Okay, so let's get specific. The source material identifies the top 5 public project risks and their mitigations. What's number 1?
No surprise here. It's risk number 1. Utility conflicts.
Back to the site work.
Always back to the site work. The failure mechanism is relying on old, inaccurate city maps of what's buried underground. The map says a sewer line is at 5 feet, but it's really at 3, right where your foundation needs to go.
And the mitigation.
Early investigations. You have to spend real money, CapEx, upfront on detailed subsurface utility engineering SUE long before the design is final. You turn a known unknown into a known known. It stabilizes your #1 cost driver.
Okay, risk 2. Scope creep. This is the classic while you're at it problem.
Oh, yeah. The political sponsor or a user group decides they need a slightly bigger auditorium or maybe some nicer facade materials, usually after the funding is already locked in.
The mitigation for that sounds politically difficult. It's decision freeze dates.
It's very difficult to enforce, but it's essential. You set a hard deadline, say at the end of design development. After that date, any change at all, has to go through a formal change control process that spells out the exact impact on cost, on schedule, and on the funding authority.
So you're using bureaucracy as a shield.
You're using transparency as a shield against optimism. It forces everyone to acknowledge the trade-offs.
Okay, risk 3, market escalation. Prices for steel, copper, labor, they go wild.
The mitigation here is to use index allowances. So instead of just guessing at a future price, you write into the contract that the material allowances are tied to a specific regional cost index. If the index goes up 5%, the budget allowance goes up 5%. It makes your estimate credible without just padding it excessively.
Risk 4, political change. An election happens, and suddenly your project is on the chopping block.
The only defense here is a paper trail. Documented approvals. Every single critical decision, from concept to funding, needs to be formally signed off by the highest possible authority and archived. It creates an institutional inertia that makes it much harder for a new administration to just reverse course.
And finally, risk 5, contractor claims.
Litigation. The risk is an ambiguous contract or a poorly documented field change that leads to a lawsuit and a massive payout from public funds.
Mitigation is just good contracts and good records.
It's not glamorous, but it's foundational. Ironclad contracts and meticulous daily logs. In a claims fight, the side with the better records almost always wins.
This all ties back to the idea of contingency. The source material is very clear. It's not a slush fund. It has to be tracked and purpose-specific.
That's right. It's capital that is specifically allocated to a risk on your register. If you have contingency for finding an underground tank and you find the tank and spend the money, you immediately update the register. That money is gone. You don't get to use it for a design upgrade.
So you're actively managing it.
You're actively managing it. You should use established frameworks like the ones from the Federal Highway Administration. They force you to name the risk, assign a probability, assess the impact, and then assign a contingency value to the residual risk, the risk that's left over even after you try to mitigate it. It's proactive, transparent management.
Okay, this is great. Let's pivot now to Section D, strategic leadership. This is where we talk about delivery methods and the architect's influence. This is less about managing the numbers and more about structuring the entire project.
Right. And the choice of delivery method is fundamentally a decision about how you're going to allocate risk between the public owner and the private sector.
Which, in a political environment, is a huge deal. So let's run through the 4 main methods. We'll start with the traditional one, design bid build, or DBV.
That's the classic. The architect finishes all the drawings, then the project goes out for bid to a bunch of general contractors, and the lowest bidder builds it.
And the risk.
Almost all of it stays with the owner. If there's an error in the design, that's the owner's risk. If the bids come in way over budget, the owner has to find more money or go back and redesign. All that risk sits with the public agency.
Okay, method 2, CM at risk, CM air.
This is very different. Here, you hire the construction manager, the CM, early in the design process. They act as a consultant, giving you real-time feedback on cost and constructability.
And the at-risk part.
That's the key. At a certain point, maybe when the drawings are 90% complete, the CM gives the owner a guaranteed maximum price, a GMP.
And the practice material really hammers this point. This is where the risk shifts.
It shifts almost entirely to the contractor, or CM. Once that GMP is signed, if construction costs more than they thought, they eat the difference. This is why it's so popular in the public sector. It gives political leaders cost certainty early in the process.
But I'm guessing there's a catch.
The catch is the GMP negotiation. A smart CM will build their own contingency right into that number. So the owner's team has to be incredibly sharp and audit that GMP breakdown to make sure it's fair and not just wildly padded.
Got it. Third method, design build, DB.
Here, one single entity, a team of a designer and a builder, is hired under one contract to do everything, design and construction.
So the big risk transfer there is coordination.
Exactly. The risk that the ducts don't fit above the ceiling or the structural columns don't align, that risk belongs entirely to the design build team. It can be much faster, but it means the owner has to be very, very good at writing performance specifications, not prescriptive designs.
And the last, most complex one, public-private partnership, PPP.
This is a whole other level. Here, the private partner might design, build, and even finance the project. Sometimes they'll even operate and maintain it for, 30 or 50 years.
And the warning in the material here is pretty stark. It says, risk transfer must match control.
It's a critical warning. If you have a PPP where the private partner is responsible for the long-term maintenance costs, but the public owner forces them to use a specific inefficient material, you've created a contradiction. You've kept control but tried to transfer the risk. That's a recipe for disaster and endless legal disputes.
So regardless of which method you choose, let's talk about the architect-builder's influence. It's biggest at the beginning, right?
It's immense, and it's so often underestimated. This is probably the single most important takeaway for anyone at this master's level. The common myth is that you control costs during bidding or construction.
It gets wrong.
It's completely wrong. As practice question 1 confirms, most of your project's cost is locked in by the time you finish the concept design.
Wait, not construction documents. Concept design.
Concept design. By that point, the architect has already decided the fundamental DNA of the building. The structural system. Is it steel or concrete? The site footprint. The ratio of glass to solid wall. Those big early moves predetermine 70 to 80% of your total cost before you've even dimensioned a single detailed drawing.
So trying to save money later is just tinkering around the edges.
Exactly. If you specify a super custom curtain wall in the concept phase, trying to value engineer it to a cheaper system later on only saves you pennies on the dollar, because the entire structure has been designed to support that initial expensive idea. You are locked in. The die is cast very, very early.
So the strategic move is to deploy specific design strategies right at the start.
You have to. Things like using early packages, releasing the foundation for bid months before the superstructure is even fully designed, or meticulous project phasing, and, most importantly, rigorous constructability reviews where you have a builder in the room with the architect during schematic design, flagging expensive or difficult details before they get baked into the plan.
And this isn't just about cost. It's about performance, too.
Absolutely. You have to lock down your performance targets, energy use intensity, acoustics, daylighting, before you start construction documents. If you wait until the building is built to discover you have a massive acoustics problem, you're not doing a small fix. You're doing a multi-million-dollar retrofit that will delay occupancy and destroy public confidence.
All of this requires fighting against a very human tendency, which the material calls optimism bias.
We all have it. We're professionals, but we're human. We fall in love with our own designs, and we naturally underestimate how much time and money they will actually take.
But the master builder has an ethical duty to fight that. As the practice question says, schedule reporting requires accurate forecasting, not just telling the politicians what they want to hear.
It's professional malpractice otherwise. If your critical path analysis clearly shows a 16-month job and the mayor wants it done in 12 for the election, your duty is to report 16 months, period.
That idea, resisting that bias, really gets to the heart of Section E, doesn't it? The moral act of management and community accountability.
It does. This is where we move beyond the technical skills of scheduling and cost coding and into, well, the philosophy of public work.
And the leadership minute section from the source is so powerful on this. It says that cost and schedule discipline are not just good management, they are moral acts.
And the flip side of that is even more powerful. When leaders, whether they're political leaders or even designers, knowingly lowball a budget or compress a timeline just to get a project approved.
They're not saving money.
No, they are borrowing trust at interest from the public.
Wow. Borrowing trusted interest.
And the interest rate on that debt is astronomically high. You pay it back later in the form of massive, embarrassing cost overruns, endless delays, and a building that might not even function properly. And ultimately, you pay it back with a collapse of public confidence in government's ability to do anything right.
So ethical leadership, in this context, is about what the material calls predictive honesty.
That's the phrase. It means being the one who walks into that public meeting with a schedule that shows a best case, a probable case, and a worst case scenario. And each one is tied to specific risks from your register.
credibility isn't about being perfect.
It's not. Credibility is earned by being able to say, look, there's a 70% chance we're going to see a 6-month delay because of this one long lead item. We've budgeted X amount of contingency to try and prevent that, but if it happens, here's our communication plan for telling the public. That is how you build trust that lasts.
We also have to connect this back to the community, to the urban and regional planning context.
Right. These project controls aren't just internal documents. They have a real impact on the city around them. The community review prompts in the module are designed to force that perspective.
So asking questions like, how does a delay affect public access? If it's a bridge, every single day of delay has a real economic cost for thousands of people.
Or, what are the most disruptive construction impacts? Your schedule has to actively manage noise and traffic and dust. You can't just run pile drivers next to a school during class hours. Those external costs are real, even if they aren't on your budget spreadsheet.
And then there's the question of who pays when things go wrong.
The public always pays. They pay for the extended general conditions, the extra financing costs. The master builder has a duty to be transparent about that.
Which brings us to the final check, the equity and ethics checkpoint. This is the absolute bottom line.
It is. Cost control can never, ever be an excuse to sacrifice fundamental requirements. You don't get to meet your budget by cutting accessible ramps or skimping on worker safety or using exploitative labor. That's not management. That is a profound ethical failure.
So this all comes together in the final assignment for the module, the Project Controls Bootcamp scenario.
Right. It's a synthesis of everything we've just discussed. The assignment puts you in charge of a publicly funded civic building with fixed goals.
And you have to do it all. A full budget decomposition, separating CapEx and OpEx. You have to create a schedule framework that tracks approvals and those crucial LLIs.
You build a comprehensive risk register with specific mitigation plans, and then you have to write a delivery method justification, a detailed argument for why DBB, CMAR, or DB is the right choice for that specific project's unique risk profile. It's where the theory becomes practice.
Okay, let's wrap this up and bring it all home for the master architect, builder, statesman. We need a final checklist, the essentials to take away from this session.
All right, 5 things. First, build your cost packages early and do it thoroughly. Define your CapEx and your OpEx and identify all those hidden owner costs before you ever break ground.
Second, schedule the approvals, schedule the funding releases and the administrative hurdles, not just the construction trades. That's your real critical path.
Third, track your long lead items like a hawk. Aggressively, they are the #1 threat to your timeline. Commit the capital early to get them ordered.
Fourth, keep an active risk register. It's a living document. You track the money you spend from contingency, you reevaluate risks constantly, and you work to turn unknowns into knowns.
And number 5, the most important one. Report truthfully, especially when it's inconvenient. Your predictive honesty is the most valuable asset you have in public work. It is the currency of trust.
We kept coming back to that central idea today, that phrase from the Leadership Minute, the danger of borrowing trust at interest. So as you prepare for this assignment, here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with. It connects the sort of political economy of all this back to your personal responsibility as a master builder.
Okay.
If the public and the entire political system is structured to reward the lowest initial bid and the most optimistic, unrealistic timeline, if the most honest forecaster is the one who often loses the job in the first place.
That's the dilemma.
How can you, the ethical master builder, actually shift that culture? How do you create an environment where honest risk forecasting and transparent contingency planning are valued more than the short-term political win of a premature ribbon cutting?
That is the enduring challenge. It's about making advanced management not just a technical skill, but a moral engine for public confidence.
We really hope this deep dive into the DBSK lecture has given you the strategic tools you need to command this topic at the master's level.
Absolutely.
And next up, we're shifting from managing the project to navigating the legal system that surrounds it. We'll be diving into codes, law, and ethics. The authority having jurisdiction, law, liability, and professional duty.
That's a crucial one. Don't miss it.
You won't want to. Until then, keep digging into those assignments.